People say dogs can feel things that humans can't. But what if your dog tried to warn you before something bad happened? This is the story of Hermes, a loyal German Shepherd, whose strong friendship with his owner didn't just show love. It might have saved his life. The story begins with a man named Benjamin, a police officer who spent most of his life working in the K9 unit. Over the years, he trained many dogs. Each one was strong, smart, and loyal. But there was one dog Benjamin could never forget, a gentle German Shepherd named Hermes. From the first day of training, something was different. Hermes listened closely, moved with care, and looked at Benjamin as if he already knew him. They didn't just work together, they connected like true friends. They trained side by side, chased down bad guys, and sat quietly together after long, tiring days. When Benjamin's time in the police force ended, Hermes was only 1 year old. Most officers leave their dogs behind, but Benjamin couldn't do that. Hermes wasn't just a partner, he was family. Benjamin went to his boss and asked if he could adopt Hermes. His boss thought for a while, then smiled. He knew how strong their bond was, and said yes. So Benjamin and Hermes retired together. No more sirens, no more long nights at the station, just peaceful days filled with walks, play, and rest. Benjamin missed the job sometimes, but whenever he looked at Hermes, he knew he made the right choice. Despite being trained as a police dog, Hermes had a soft heart. He wasn't loud or rough like people expected. He didn't care much for barking or chasing. What he loved most was curling up beside Benjamin, resting his head on his lap, and just being close. But bringing Hermes home wasn't easy. Benjamin's wife and kids were nervous. They worried that Hermes, trained to chase bad guys, might be too dangerous for a quiet home. But Benjamin reassured them. He had trained Hermes from day one and knew exactly what kind of dog he was. Kind, calm, and full of love. It didn't take long for Hermes to win them over. He gently followed the kids around the house, wagged his tail softly, and curled up at their feet during movie nights. Slowly, the family stopped being afraid. Despite being trained as a police dog, Hermes was gentle and kind. He didn't enjoy barking or chasing. What he loved most was lying beside Benjamin and resting his head on his lap. He was a big softy at heart. But bringing Hermes home wasn't easy. Benjamin's wife and kids were nervous. They had heard stories about police dogs and were scared he might be too rough or dangerous. Benjamin sat them down and explained everything. He had trained Hermes himself and knew the dog better than anyone. Soon, their fears faded. Hermes followed the children gently, wagging his tail. He lay at their feet and loved joining them for movie nights. The kids laughed when he snored during cartoons. Hermes didn't take long to become part of the family. It felt like he had always been there. But happiness doesn't last forever, because 2 years later, something happened that changed everything. Hermes was now 3 years old, strong, loyal, and always alert. One sunny morning, he and Benjamin went for their usual jog around the neighborhood. Everything felt normal. They came home, shared breakfast, and laughed over morning chatter. But then Benjamin noticed the roof looked worn out and needed fixing. He grabbed his ladder and tools, ready to do the job. As he walked outside, Hermes suddenly started acting strange. He barked loudly, whined, and even grabbed Benjamin's pant leg, trying to stop him. Benjamin didn't understand. He asked his wife to take Hermes inside so he could focus. She pulled the struggling dog into the kitchen and shut the door. Minutes later, a loud scream came from outside. The family rushed out. Benjamin had fallen from the roof. He wasn't moving. His wife cried out, and the children called for help. At the hospital, the news wasn't good. Benjamin had a broken arm, deep cuts and bruises. But the doctors were most worried about his head. He had fallen hard, head first. When they did a scan, it showed serious brain injury. Days went by, and Benjamin didn't wake up. His family hoped and prayed, but days turned into weeks, then months. Still, no change. Finally, the doctor said he might never wake up. So his family decided to bring him home. They thought maybe being around loved ones could help. They hired a nurse, set up a hospital bed in the bedroom, and made the room calm and quiet. As soon as Benjamin returned, Hermes rushed to him. The dog had been sad and confused the whole time Benjamin was in the hospital. Now he stayed by his side day and night. He lay at the foot of the bed and watched over him. Hermes only left to eat or go outside for a few minutes. Then he came right back and curled up beside Benjamin. He didn't play, bark, or run like before. His whole world was waiting for one thing: his best friend to open his eyes. No one knew what the future held. But Hermes didn't care. He waited by Benjamin's side. One day, a doctor visited and noticed something different about Benjamin. He ran a few tests and found something surprising. Benjamin could still feel touch and sounds. He couldn't move or speak, but deep inside, he was still there. The doctor sat down with the family and gently explained the truth. Benjamin might never wake up. His brain had been quiet for too long. The kindest thing now, the doctor said, might be to let him go, to stop the machines and let his body rest. Benjamin's wife broke into tears. She had held on for so long, but after 2 painful years with no sign of hope, she finally agreed. She didn't want him to suffer anymore. When she told their daughter, the girl was shocked. But after the doctor explained gently, she understood. It was the hardest choice they ever made. They decided the procedure would happen the next day at the hospital. That evening, the house felt heavy with silence. Hermes lay quietly in the corner of Benjamin's bedroom, his eyes wide and sad. It was like he had heard the family's conversation and knew something was wrong. His ears moved with every small sound, and his eyes followed each step his family took. He didn't bark or cry. He just watched, as if waiting for something. The next morning, when the ambulance arrived, Hermes grew tense. As the paramedics entered the room, Hermes stood up and blocked their path. He let out a deep growl, warning them to stay away from Benjamin. When they stepped closer, he barked loudly and showed his teeth. The paramedics froze, unsure of what to do. At that moment, Benjamin's daughter ran in. She grabbed Hermes and pulled him away, gently talking to him. But Hermes wouldn't calm down. He barked, struggled, and shook all over. She had no choice but to lock him in another room. With Hermes out of the way, the paramedics carefully lifted Benjamin and carried him outside. As the door closed and the siren began to wail, Hermes jumped through the window and ran after the ambulance. He sprinted down the road, chasing the ambulance with all his strength. Hermes didn't stop, not even for a second. His legs were tired, but his heart told him to keep going. Back at home, Benjamin's wife stood on the porch, watching in shock. Her heart beat faster. The last time Hermes acted like this was the day Benjamin had fallen. What if Hermes was trying to warn them again? She tried to call the doctor, but it was too late. At the hospital, the doctors took Benjamin into the room where the final procedure would happen. Hermes wasn't allowed inside. But that didn't stop him. He pushed through the hospital's front doors. People screamed and jumped aside as the big German Shepherd ran down the hallway. When security blocked him, Hermes turned and raced around the building. He found a back door, pushed through, and followed the scent straight to Benjamin's room. Inside, the doctor held a syringe. He was just about to begin. Suddenly, Hermes leapt forward and knocked the doctor to the floor. The syringe flew across the room. Everyone gasped and ran toward the dog. Then, something happened. Benjamin's heart monitor beeped faster. and a weak voice said, "Leave the dog alone." The room went silent as the doctor froze, his eyes wide, while Benjamin slowly opened his eyes, his fingers twitching, his lips trembling like he was trying to speak. And then, finally, he took a shaky breath and woke up. Hermes barked with joy, rushing to the bed, jumping up with his front paws on the mattress, licking Benjamin's hand again and again, while Benjamin gave a weak smile and slowly rested his hand on Hermes's head, holding on like he knew his best friend had never left. Everyone in the room stood still, eyes filling with tears, hearts full of shock and relief, when suddenly Benjamin's wife ran in, saw him awake, and dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around him as gently as she could. Benjamin looked at Hermes with love in his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, boy. You saved my life."